Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our webinar. We're really excited to have you all. Today, we're going to be talking about our project called Ramadan Revealed, and we're focusing on a community-based perspective on Ramadan. My name is Nandini, and I'm an incoming medical student at the University of Minnesota.
And I'm Warda Hussein. I am an incoming student to the School of Nursing, the Master of Nursing program.
And Aneri Shah is not here with us today, but she also did a lot of work on this project, and she's also going to be an incoming medical student this year. And then we also want to thank Christina Cipoli for all of her help for making this webinar possible and for making this project possible. And then Chloe Goodman, who was working with us last year to work on this presentation. We'd also like to thank BD Helping Building Healthy Communities Award for supporting our work, and our partners, which we have had many that has helped us come up with this project. So our learning objectives today is we want to understand the importance of Ramadan to those who observe and their families. We're also going to describe some common misconceptions surrounding Ramadan. And lastly, and most importantly, we would like to reflect on how community narratives can help shape medical education. So for our agenda today, we would love if you could take a pre-survey that Wertha put in the chat. It should take about 5 minutes just to tell where everyone is coming from in terms of like their knowledge on Ramadan. And then we're gonna do a quick overview of Ramadan, should take about 10 to 20 minutes. And then we'll go transition into our learning module, which is a 20-minute video showcasing some of the community narratives that we recorded, and then also some of the questions that people who did not observe Ramadan had. And then at the very end, we'll take about 5 minutes to wrap up and do some questions. And then we'll send out a post survey that'll take a little bit longer than the pre-survey. It'll be 5 to 10 minutes, just doing an evaluation of our webinar here. And we would love it if you could answer our post survey. It would really help us in the future as healthcare professionals and also possible future projects. So we'd love your feedback. Thank you.
So what is Ramadan? Ramadan is the 9th month of the lunar calendar. And like the site says, it really does vary every single year. In the lunar calendar, there's only 300 days versus the sun calendar is 365 days. And so Ramadan tends to shift up in the year 10 to 15 days. And it really depends on the moon and the moon sighting of the year, which is like the big event in the Muslim community. During the day, Muslims, starting from the morning prayer, which can be anywhere from like 3 to 6 a.m., you stop eating and you stop drinking food. And you don't eat and drink until the nighttime, iftar time, which is roughly just before sunset or just at sunset. And although Ramadan can seem harsh from the outside, since it's like you're fasting, you're not drinking, you're not eating for an entire day, it's really a joyous occasion because it's a time where most Muslim families get to come together, eat together, stay together and really connect over that time period. And even not even just during the day, but like even at night, going to night prayers and staying up together until the morning prayer and reading Quran or engaging in other lectures and whatnot. It's also a time to give charity and to also give back to those who are who are less fortunate than you might be. So for example, helping give money to poorer families or to families who might not be able to afford as much food as they may need for Ramadan to help them break their fast and make their lives a little bit easier, or engaging with community members who may need help in other areas of life and whatnot. And of course, like with every culture, since there are Muslims from many different walks of life and from many different countries and ethnic backgrounds, traditions are different. My tradition in my family might not be the same as a tradition of a person who may be from another country and whatnot. Next slide. So background, Ramadan in Islam. So Islam is based off of the 5 pillars, and those 5 pillars are profession of faith, or the Shahada, as most people will hear, prayer, alms or charity, fasting during Ramadan, and pilgrimage. And it's basically, these are the 5 pillars of the foundation of being like a good Muslim in the eyes of the religion. And so by abstaining from certain distractions and negativities, Muslims seek a richer perception of God, where essentially by moving away from all negative things and focusing more on the spirituality, we hope to essentially become more spiritual as the month goes on, and to also remember all the things that essentially like God has graced upon us, such as like being able to afford food, being able to not worry about food and whatnot, recognizing the struggles that others may go through in life normally. And also like Ramadan is also a very big time to really begin to read more Quran and to focus more on lectures and to understand the meaning and to truly have a deeper tie with the holy book. And it's also like a reminder to help those in need. It's sort of like a yearly month to say, feed your soul, focus more on others, focus on the community, focus on helping as much as you can while also helping yourself spiritually. So important terms, and these will be terms that will also come up a lot within the learning module. Suhoor. Suhoor is the morning meal that's eaten just before sunrise. So before the morning prayer, most Muslims will wake up and they'll begin to eat a lot of food or just some food, taking as much water as they can, since this is the period of time just before you have to stop eating. So you'll eat like a lot of grains, or you'll drink a lot of water, or take in some food before you have to stop eating. And then iftar is the evening meal that we eat after we break our fast. And oftentimes people like to crack the joke that, you don't get normal feasts for dinner, but you'll get feasts for Ramadan to help break your fast. Eid al-Fitr is one of the two holy holidays in Islam. That Eid al-Fitr comes right after Ramadan, and it signifies the end of the month. And it's often a celebration where a lot of families will get together, like wider families. We have like 40, 50 people. Everyone will get together and go to prayer. It's a day of feasting. It's a festival day. Most people will say like, Barak, or like Happy Eid, or, a lot of wisecracks often will say some other phrases like happy eating and whatnot. But I know gifts will be given to children. My younger cousins always get a lot of gifts from their parents. And oftentimes we'll just, one family member will get everyone together and say, let's all eat. And then Deen is just another word for religion, or religious duty to God themselves and their traditions. So monthly overview of Ramadan. Ramadan begins with the sighting of the new moon in countries that are able to see it. Typically, the first day is one of the most difficult since it takes time to digest the fasting. Oftentimes the moon sighting will happen in the Middle East currently, but it's basically any Muslim who sees the new moon that signifies the beginning of the month of Ramadan. And as soon as that moon is seen that night, the next day is the first day of Ramadan. And it is typically the most difficult because you're not used to being so sleepless and waking up so early in the morning, and you're really not used to not having breakfast and lunch and dinner and waking up in the morning and feeling very hungry. It's a common occurrence every single year. After the first 2 weeks, people are typically more adjusted to fasting, and it's most easier to fast. Most people have adapted to a schedule of reading more Quran, listening to lectures, or just spending more time with family. So after a while, the sleep deprivation does sit in, but you get really used to it. You start to enjoy the month. You start to forget about the meal times, and you start to focus more on, these are times where I can begin to enrich myself, or like as families will sit down and listen to lectures, or even just sit down and tell stories that they've heard from their religious teachers or from their family and whatnot, and to just spend time together and really delve more into the religion. And then the last 10 days of Ramadan are some of the most sacred days of the month. It is said that the night of decree, or Laylatul Qadr, if anyone has heard the other variation, falls on one of the last 10 days of the month. And on that day, the Quran was revealed. Usually during this time, people increase additional prayers. So even during the last 10 days, a lot of people will choose to stay in the mosque more, to the point where mosques will open their doors to have people sleep in them. And the community will start to focus a lot more on those last 10 days. No one really knows the exact day when the Quran was revealed, but they do know that it just falls on the last 10 days. So it's a lot more of sort of reminiscing about the 20 days before and what you fasted, and then also focusing more on prayers and focusing more on making dua and like meditating, and just before the month ends. And then finally it's Eid, and after Ramadan ends, the new moon is sighted again and signaling the new month. The Eid festival begins, which is 3 days of celebration and fun for Muslims, and it really is 3 days of just doing whatever and eating whatever and just having fun as a family and celebrating the achievement of the month. So a day in Ramadan, suhoor, the pre-dawn meal that Muslims eat before the morning prayer, before they begin their fast. Like I said, it's just like a small meal that you eat, or a big meal if you feel like you're going to be very hungry for the day. Most people don't experience drastic changes in their usual schedule. Many will still go to work or school, etc. One change is that some people will try to make it to the mosque for the 5 daily prayers if they can. And just like I said before, like trying to fit in more things to enrich yourself spiritually, trying to read more Quran, listen to more lectures during that time. I know like I shorten my work day since I'm not going to lunch. So I'm like, lunch hour, I'll just head home early rather than having to worry about eating. Days usually vary for everyone, but may spend time reading more religious scripts like the Quran, listening or attending lectures, spending more time with family. And during Ramadan, of course, there is the night prayer, which lasts anywhere from like 10 to like 1 a.m. And most people will like attend that, but that's typically after iftar. But and then there's iftar, the meal where Muslims break their fast. Typically, the meal is at sunset or after dusk prayer. And I always like to say, like, iftar can last as long as you want it to. Just break your fast and keep eating. But that's typically how the day ends. And then what are some of the common misconceptions surrounding Ramadan? So one myth, for example, is Muslims fast even when they are sick. And the reality is that not all Muslims fast during Ramadan, though it is a pillar of Islam. There are a lot of sort of exceptions that will help people. So for example, if you feel ill, you're not obligated to fast. If you even think you'll get ill while you're fasting, you don't have to fast. You don't have to worry about fasting if the person is like elderly, if they're diabetic, like in the case, my mother is diabetic, so she does not fast because it will aggravate her health. Another myth is that Ramadan means Muslims are only fasting from food and drink. And Ramadan is actually more than just fasting from food and water, where you're fasting from negative thoughts, you're fasting from negative habits that you may have. A lot of people oftentimes choose to quit smoking during this time because it's a great time to sort of abstain from anything negative and to focus more on the positive and the spirituality. Another myth is that there is no reason someone would voluntarily fast for a whole day. And the truth is, like, a lot of people look forward to Ramadan. Many people will count down the days, they'll count down the months. Some will even begin fasting ahead of time just to sort of have the feeling, because Ramadan, even though it does seem like, oh, it's so difficult, how can you not eat and drink? It's a lot more of, like I said, like the family time. It's a lot more of being spiritual. It's a lot more time to delve into yourself and to improve yourself. And just that feeling is kind of like a warm blanket where you're like, I have a whole bunch of Muslims around the world who are with me in this moment fasting, and who are with me in this moment truly like meditating on themselves and focusing on spirituality. Not all Muslims are fasting during Ramadan. Most scholars agree that elderly, pregnant, nursing, or menstruating people, ill people, and travelers are exempted from fasting. It is always said that fasting should never be difficult for you. Fasting wasn't made to be difficult for Muslims. If at all it brings you difficulty, you don't have to fast. If it's for a traveler, it's already tough enough that you're traveling, even in modern day. You don't have to fast. For a woman who is pregnant or nursing, she's focusing on her child. A menstruating woman, of course, is bleeding, so she has to make sure she's replenishing herself or themselves, depending on what's it called. If a Muslim is not fasting, it does not necessarily mean that they don't want to. I know many that would love to fast, but due to their own conditions don't have to. For example, the elderly, who as they get older would love to feel like the spirituality and everything, but are unable to due to their old age. Ramadan is more than just fasting for food or water. Ramadan also involves fasting from negative thoughts and, sexual activities. Cursing is a difficult one for me. But Ramadan carries great spiritual importance. Although understanding poverty may be part of the reason people fast, fasting was ordained on Muslims to help them achieve greater taqwa or God consciousness, which is true. Essentially, you want to be more aware of all the blessings that you have in your life, and you want to be essentially like gracious for those, and to fast is sort of like a step to sort of remind yourself. And by avoiding basic necessities, Muslims are able to concentrate on worship and gratitude.
So what do those who observe gain from Ramadan? So Warda already talked a lot about it and did a great job kind of summarizing her experience with Ramadan. So what we noticed when we were doing our video was 3 important levels of improvement. There was that individual improvement, that community development that Warda was talking about, and also that spiritual growth. And our video will go more into some of the narratives highlighting these areas. And so how can healthcare team members work with patients during Ramadan? So our team comprised of people who weren't healthcare professionals yet, but we really do think that from our video, that understanding the Islamic perspective is very important. And so recognizing that that fasting and that observing Ramadan is an act of morality and conventional reverence. It takes perseverance and self-control, and this allows for spiritual growth. And also recognizing that the Quran prescribes and states that fasting is essential for spiritual health. And we kind of broke down what we heard from community members into 3 categories and the roles that they wish their healthcare providers provided for them. So really listening, understanding, and asking questions. So we heard asking questions a lot throughout our video. So people are very open to explaining their faith and also telling their stories. So that's a very important part. And that is what we decided to do with our video. And we really took a narrative medicine approach to this learning module. And so narrative medicine was a term coined by Dr. Rita Charon, and she defines it as a commitment to understanding patients' lives, caring for caregivers, and giving voice to the suffering. And so through this approach, we decided to really highlight the narratives of the community members and taking also gaps in understanding and highlighting those within our video. And so I'm really excited to showcase that today. And so our method used a very feedback and community-based approach. So we had surveys that influenced the questions that we asked to interviewees, and it was a very parallel process. So we had surveys going on simultaneously with the interviews. We highlighted those gaps in understanding, and then we would tailor our interviews to that and also kind of recognize which stories that people wanted to share and highlight. So community members were heavily involved in the process, especially the planning process took us quite a long time because we wanted to make sure that we were connecting with organizations like the Mixed Blood Theater. We were involving students who observe Ramadan and really centering their perspective. And so it started with planning. We did surveying and filming around the same time, storyboarding, and then editing. And then lastly, we were planning to do an in-person showing at Kook, but obviously we're very, very happy that we were able to do this webinar in place of that. And so I will open up this video, and we had a really large team on our video. So thank you to everyone who helped out with the planning process and the filming.
I wish people knew more about why we actually fast and things of that nature rather than just, what we can and can't do. Like, a lot of people just ask, like, oh, you can't even drink water. That's really just where it ends. They don't really ask, why is that? Why do you do that? What else do you have to do during Ramadan? Is there anything else required of you?
Yes, I do celebrate Ramadan.
I do not celebrate Ramadan, but I do practice intermittent fasting.
And yeah, I do celebrate Ramadan and I do fast.
I do not celebrate Ramadan, and I don't fast, but I occasionally do that just for kicks.
I do observe Ramadan, and I do plan on fasting.
I do not celebrate Ramadan, but I try to know a little bit about different cultures' holidays.
I do celebrate Ramadan. I fast the whole month and most of it, yeah, so definitely in the Ramadan swing of things.
I wish I kind of knew more about it. So back when I was studying in middle school, we only learned about the faith very little. And so Ramadan was only mentioned. And then in pharmacy school, we only know that, they're fasting from sunrise and down. I assume there's no liquid intake, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that I don't know about it. And if anything, I would love to learn more about it and just everything about it, yeah.
So Ramadan is the 9th month in the Islamic calendar where Muslims fast from sun up to sundown. The times vary over the years. So we spend the day getting closer to God, being more spiritual, spending more time with family, and helping those in need, and spending a lot of time in the mosque as well.
Suhoor is the meal that you eat before the morning prayer. So when it's fasting from sunrise to sundown, the morning prayer comes before sunrise. So you'll eat a meal before that prayer, and then as soon as you pray, that's when your fasting starts. And usually by the time after you pray, it's really close, like within a half an hour or an hour to sunrise itself. So it's a morning meal. Some people have like really heavy foods. Like I remember my mom would make like oatmeal or like really heavy grains, and then we'll have like milk or a lot of water because you want to stay hydrated throughout the day. You don't have any of that when you're fasting. And then iftar is the after fasting meal. So it's literally, I've heard that it means like breakfast where you're breaking your fast. And then a lot of times, some days it'll be like super feasts. So all the foods that you love, all the traditional stuff, whole lot of foods, usually spread out on like a big mat, and then everyone is eating together. But yeah, usually it's the meal where you eat after you're done fasting, after you pray the night's prayer.
wixii sahlanaado diintu nabigeena salawaatullaahi wasalaamu caleyh wuxuu noo sunneeyey inaan ku afurno timirta inaan ku afurno ayuu sunno ka dhigay. Marka waxaan jecelnahay haddii la helaayo in aan timirta ku afurno, haddii kale haddii timirta waxa xigana biyaha cad inay noqdaan, laakiin wax kasta oo cunto ah ayaa lagu afuri karaa. Haddii timir la waayo, haddii biyaha jirin, juice, caano, cunto, wax kasta oo cunto ayaa lagu afuri karaa sharciyan.
Well, so I know there's a little bit of of gift giving or of giving to charity or other things of the community. But I guess I'd like to know more on, we see the visible giving up of stuff, but in other cultures we see a lot more of the celebration part of it. And I guess that's not as visible to us because what we see during the day is the fasting, suffering part of it, the giving up, but not why people look forward to it or what the special part of it is. Yeah, so I feel like Ramadan, it definitely is an opportunity for me to recalibrate in a sense. It definitely gives me an opportunity to reconnect with community, whether that be at the mosque or with friends at going to like Islamic lectures during this month, or reconnecting with my family, having iftar at one of my cousin's houses or my aunt's houses, and really redefining my relationship with God. And I feel like during this entire month, it definitely gives me an opportunity to just recenter myself, take a deep breath to a certain extent, and you'd really be surprised by how much, it sounds ironic, by cutting out so much of these things, how much you're gaining through this experience. So it's definitely both a spiritual and physical experience this month for me, definitely.
I feel like I'm at my best. Like that's the prime of my year. Like if you want to get to know me during Ramadan, because the distraction of food and drink is not there. So like I have more brain space to focus on other aspects of my life. So if there's something wrong with my personality, then I'll acknowledge it during that month. Or if I'm lacking in any sort of department, I have 24 hours to like focus on that and just make myself become a better person. Also getting rewarded for it, which is like a perk. So
waxaan soomaa ilaahay baa igu waajibiyey, marka amarka ilaahay baan qaadanaya, diintana aan amraysa, nabigeennaa na faray, marka waa qayb ka mid ah tiirarka islaamka ku taagan yahay, saa darteed baan u soomaya.
I celebrate Ramadan because it's a part of my religion, but then also it's a time where I really get to check myself. So by fasting, perhaps I realized that my eating habits haven't been so good. But it's also a time where, like, spiritually, if I feel like I haven't been doing so well, it's a time where I can begin to sort of get back into that. Because it's a really big restart. You're really hitting the restart button. You're telling yourself, okay, I'm not eating, but then I'm gonna fill my time with something else. And I remember reading a quote somewhere where they said for 11 months you fill your stomach, but for the 1 month of Ramadan, you fill your soul. So you never realize how much time cooking takes, how much time eating takes before Ramadan, when you're left over with hours of just doing nothing, but then instead you begin to fill your time with getting closer to God, maybe even hanging out with family that you haven't hung out with before. Because outside, like in life, it's a lot more difficult, but then in Ramadan, usually things begin to wind down and families begin to wind down a little bit more and get closer together. And just sort of hang out, you know, even if you're not eating, it's more talking time, it's more storytelling time, it's more time to like read the Quran together or listen to lectures together, and even just like praying together and everything.
I think during Ramadan, it's kind of a constant reminder of my religion, my deen, what I'm supposed to be doing. And really, like, I'm hungry a lot of the time, so it's really just reminding me that, you know, there's a reason why I'm here. I'm here, like, number one, to worship my God. And number two is to really just be grateful for what I have also at all times. Just because usually you can just eat whenever you want. You never really think twice about it. So having that constant reminder, you know, people is not as grateful as you. And it's also a month of giving too. So I think overall it's just it's a really good, like a spiritual cleanse in a sense.
I guess it's, what does it feel like after you finish fasting all day? How does that sensation where you can actually eat together as a community and that enjoyment?
Fasting makes me healthier. It makes me closer to my Lord because I'm following like what I'm expected as a Muslim person, and it just makes me happy because I'm like accomplishing a lot. It's not easy to fast an entire day, so I do 30 days, so I feel like accomplished when we are celebrating our big day.
marka ugu horeyso waxaan ka helaa inaan qaatay amarka ilaahay kalsooni baan ka helaa iyo raaxo inaan qaadanayo amarka ilaahay marka labaadna waxaan ka helaa caafimaad sida nabigu noo sheegay salawaatullahi wasalaamu caleyh uu yidhi suumu tasixo sooma waad caafimaadaysaane marka laba xaalaan ka helaa marka hore kalsooni iyo qalbi degan baan ka helaa markii amarka ilaahay baan qaatay marka labaadna yaboohi nabigu noo yaboohay uu yidhi sooma caafimaad baad helaysaan beddelkeeda ayadana waan ka helaa marka labada qodobba weyn waxyaalaha soonkaan ka helaa.
I feel more like content, and I feel like Ramadan for me personally means like it's a month of just being spiritually connected, and like it's just a month devoted to improvement and devotion and worship and connecting.
I think especially in the beginning stages of Ramadan, it's very hard. I remember like 3 summers ago, I was down in Texas doing a research program, and I think that was my first summer doing work while fasting, and thinking about, the first thing that I would think about in the morning was, oh my God, I can't drink water, it's so hot, I don't have coffee, I'm exhausted. But it takes a toll on you. For me personally, the first few days of Ramadan is extremely difficult, but in the evening you kind of step back and you're thinking, hey, I went through all this hardship of not having water and food during the day, but really stepping back and thinking about how grateful I am to be able to have something to break my fast with, where a lot of people don't, is definitely something that kind of relieves that stress and relieves that toll that it kind of takes on my mental health in the beginning of the month.
How do we work with patients that celebrate Ramadan?
I would say to not look at it as a burden, to not look at it as something that these patients don't fully understand. It's actually something that the patients, to me, especially for me, I can only speak from my perspective, I actually feel like is a time for me to even be more conscious of my health, be more conscious of my life, be more conscious of everything.
haddii xanuun adag i qabto oo aad ii dhibahayo waxaan sameeyaa waa afuri karaa waa afuraa daawadan qaataa haddii xanuunku yahay xanuun idhibahaya oo caafimaadkayga iyo noloshayda wax u dhimahaya haddii uu yahay mid yar oo iska madax xanuunana oo saacado jirahayana waa adkaystaa intaan soomanahay markaan afurana waan cunaa.
I'm always kind of curious of what it means for the families involved. I mean, just like, so what did you have for dinner last night? Who came to, I mean, thinking of it sort of like as a family or community celebration. Again, it's more curiosity. I don't think I like to pry into people's, personal or religious services, but just, hey, how are things going? Did you have fun? Who's anybody new in town? Kind of looking at it as a family gathering or community gathering.
Ramadan is the only time of the year where my whole family is sitting and eating a meal together. Like, you will never find all 11 of us sitting and having a meal together. But usually we'll like invite family members and just like set up in the living room and just all sit on the ground and eat. I also have the opportunity of meeting a lot of people that I wouldn't have met during Ramadan, because we go to the mosque after breaking our fast, and like you'll be seeing people your age just trying to pray and like have conversations, and you'll just like meet a lot of new people.
Well, my favorite thing about Ramadan is during iftar, we also call it afar. My family, I love that my family always like gets together and we have like, we make sure to have everybody's favorite dish, and I just love just being there, like just with my whole family having samboos debates, because I don't know why people hate on tuna samboos, but I love it. I just love that I get to see relatives that I don't get to see. I love that it's a tradition that we've kept alive.
What can we do as a student community to make sure that we do not disregard your practice, and we understand like why this is important, and like make the best accommodation for you?
I think to my earlier answer, to be able to give me a little bit more space, I suppose, to a certain extent of understanding and recognizing this individual is going through some type of like caffeine withdrawals, not having water. I think it's just a little bit more patience in the beginning stages, but also understanding that this is a much bigger thing than not just having food and not having water during the day, but it's a larger understanding of the spirituality in this, and understanding, hey, maybe this person may not be at their best performance right now, but kind of back to that thing of just understanding. I think that that's a huge piece of all of it.
I think it's a really good thing to ask questions. You can always ask questions. There's no bad question. If you want to learn, then just ask a question.
Kind of give it a try, and not like intermittent fasting where you just don't eat food and just drink water, but from everything till sundown. And then it'll kind of give you an idea of what fasting is. So give it a try.
There's a lot. I don't know if I can like say all of it because it's a lot, but I wish people knew that we weren't just starving ourselves with food and drink. And most people think, it's not a bad thought, but most people think we fast just to feel what poor people are going through, which is not the case. We're fasting to better ourselves, better our community, to help the world become a better place by starting with small changes which come from ourselves. I also wish people knew that there's like a really large spiritual aspect of Ramadan. We're like praying more, we're worshiping more, we're reading the Quran more, we're connecting with the communities more, which is like a really good thing.
A lot of people, what they confuse it with also is you're not just fasting from food. You're supposed to be fasting from foul language, fasting from hurting others, fasting from any negative thing, and you're supposed to be spending that whole month in positivity.
It's also a perk because it adds a lot of quality to my life, which I don't think I would have if I wasn't like, not forced, but if it wasn't compulsory, then I feel like I would miss out on a lot and I wouldn't be who I am today.
So now we would like to just open it up to questions. We hope that you all learned something because we learned a lot from this project for sure. And Werther's also going to put the post survey into the chat just as an evaluation of today's presentation. So thank you so much for coming.
I have a question. If you both want to talk, this is Christina, if you just want to talk a little bit about your experience in making the video and going through this process, maybe how your expectations changed or your views changed throughout it.
I guess I can go. I guess I don't think we really thought the video, or at least the process was going to be, at least for myself, when we first sat down and we first said that we were going to do this. But for sure, I think it was one of the biggest learning opportunities that I've had, like equally like parallel to my entire undergraduate education. But just like understanding, learning the value of like storytelling and learning the value of truly going to the community and saying, hey, like, you know this, can you please teach us? And then finding, and even just like going out and saying like, what are you curious about, to even like other community members who didn't know very much about Ramadan, wanted to learn more about Ramadan, or know some and wanted to understand better for their like counterparts at work or their counterparts at school and whatnot. And so just like learning about that, and definitely the understanding like the challenges of others, whether that be like even just putting it into words, because I feel like that was one of the toughest things, like growing up in the community for myself. Like it's very easy to say like I understand what it is, but then also finding a way to enunciate that and to say that to everyone else in a way where it could be understood by everyone and it could be valued by everyone. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then also kind of dealing with that original discomfort of asking questions for me was difficult, especially giving surveys to people we didn't know that well, or talking to somebody about their stories is really difficult. But I realized that as Werther was saying, narratives are really important, and so getting over that discomfort was really important too, to get to those narratives.
We have a question. Quentin asks, can we access this video later? Can I share it with others? If I understand this correctly, the video is on the Kook website, right?
Yep, the video is on the Kook website now, and then this session is also being recorded and will be available. All right, I'm going to stop.